Hey, it's Ashley here and welcome back to my channel. In today's video, I am going to be transforming this chest of drawer. So this is my first piece of 2023. It's super exciting. This needs some work, so let's go ahead and start this video. So you guys know I normally wash my pieces before I actually start to do anything, but I didn't do that this time with this piece, and I just removed all of the drawers because this piece wasn't as dirty. And then I just started to feel around to see what I can take apart to kind of update this a little bit more, and it is going to be this front piece here that I am messing with, and you will see that later on in the video. The next thing I did was I started to work on the drawer front. So I removed all of the hardware, and then I started to fill in these extra holes that I don't know why this piece has these extra holes, but it was so many holes in the front. So to do this, I'm just going to take some painter's tape and I'm going to put this on the backs so that when I do add in the DAP, it will not go through. And then I just started to add my first layer of DAP on here because I'm probably going to be doing like 2 or 3 to make sure that these are nice and filled in. The next thing I did was I started to work on this drawer front right here. So it was missing a piece at the top. Luckily, they kept it. I love when people do this. It's so easy to fix. So I'm just using my wood glue. I'm adding this on here, and then I'm taking some of my clamps and I'm just gonna clamp this into place. Once I did that, I then did my syringe and I added some tape into this area here. So to make sure that it was going to be nice and glued in place, I just added some glue underneath there, and then I took my painter's tape and I made sure I pulled it really taut and I wrapped it around that piece. Next, I started to work on the veneer on the side. So of course you can see there are some pieces that are missing. There's some that need to be glued back on. So you can break these pieces off if you want and just put your DAP and stuff on top of it. I sometimes do that, but most of the time I like to just go ahead and glue them back down and then clamp them and let them dry. And then the areas that are missing, I go ahead and I take my DAP. Mostly, first of all, y'all, I love to use Bondo. I didn't have any Bondo, so that's why I'm using my DAP. I definitely would not have used this because I don't like to use it. I love to use Bondo. But anyways, I'm just gonna take it and I'm just gonna start to fill in the areas that are missing. I'm gonna let it dry, and of course, later on in the video, you're gonna see that I'm going to sand these pieces away. All right, so moving along, like I said, to kind of update this piece a little bit more, I'm just going to be removing this front piece. So again, I just examined the bottom, making sure that if I did remove this, that it was gonna be fine, it's gonna look right. So as you can see, it's just really nice and straight there. So when I did take it off, some of the piece, like a piece of the wood kind of came off. So all I'm doing is I'm just gonna glue that back and let that dry. So I started to try to remove the nails at the bottom, but it was so hard. So instead, I just bammed it up to the top because you're not even gonna be able to see these. So I am just bamming them just like that. After that, I just came back and put another layer of DAP over those holes, let it dry. And then I came in and I started to sand these down. For this, I actually just went ahead and just used the 220 and sanded them down nice and smooth. Okay, so like I said, I did a few layers of this. So this is the third layer that I'm putting on. This is why I like to use Bondo. But this is the third layer of DAP that I'm putting on because it was still like an indentation of where you can see the holes. So I put that on there, let it dry, and then I came back and I sanded it down smooth. And then this time I just started to sand the whole drawer because I was getting it ready for painting. So after I finished with the drawers, I just went around the rest of the piece, of course, and I first was like just going around with the 220, and then when I started to, you know, sand this down, roughen it up a little bit for painting, I was like, you know what, I think I just want to go ahead and sand this down to the raw wood for the side pieces and also the top and then the bottom, and then paint everything else. So then that's what I started to do. So I took my 80 grit and I started to sand down the edges here, and then I also sanded down the middle top 2 parts, and I'm also going to be sanding down the top of this. All right, so the next thing I did was I just sanded this DAP away, and I'm using a 220 grit to do that. And then after that, I'm just going to take some of my citrus strip because my citrus strip and this little brush here, and I'm going to be going in the corners because I really couldn't get that with my sander. So I'm just going to take my citrus strip and I am going to paint on in the edges, and I'm going to let that sit for a little bit before I remove the finish. Okay, so while I was waiting on the citrus strip to start to work, again, as I said, I am sanding down the top. So I could have stripped this too, but honestly, sometimes I just like to, you know, work my arms, get a little workout in. So I'm using my 80 grit and I am sanding down the top. All right, so I came back again with just a little bit more citrus strip before I take my wire brush and start to scrub these areas. I'm just adding a little bit more citrus strip on there. So now I'm just going to take a wire brush and I am just going to start to scrub into those corners to get rid of that finish. So for this piece, I'm going to be doing a raised stencil. So this is my first time using the Durham's water putty, and it will be my last. I wasn't a fan of this. It's really simple to use though. You just mix the content that's in there with some water and you use it. So it's kind of like Bondo though, because it dries and it dries really, really fast. That's something I wasn't a fan of. So anyways, I'm using this really pretty stencil that I got from Royal Studio, and I'll have it down below, the one that I used. I love this pattern, it's so nice. So anyways, I started to rub this on and I'm like, oh my gosh, yes, this is so good. This is amazing. It's so smooth. Pulled it off. When I pulled it off, y'all, the stencil was perfect. But then the stuff started to dry really hard. So when I did it the second time, as you can see, it's starting to get really thick. So I'm like putting it on, and then when I pulled it off, some of it was coming off from the stencil. So it just wasn't, it wasn't working right. And I'm like, I'm not using this anymore. So after that, I just went back and started to use my DAP. So I don't even use in either one of these. I normally use the Dixie Mud or like a stencil paste, because I mean, it's meant for it and they work so much better. So anyways, I'm just gonna go along and I just did the rest of this on all of the drawers, and I am adding my stencil this way. So after I was finished adding a stencil to all of the drawer fronts, it was time for me to clean this up a bit. Now again, if I would have used a paste or something like that, I wouldn't have had much cleanup to do, but I did. So I'm just using my X-Acto knife and I'm just going around and I'm cutting away some of the areas and, you know, scraping away areas to make it look nice and clean. And then I started to smooth out the stencil with a 220 grit. So as you can see here, this is something too that was, so this is a Durham's putty. And like when I was sanding, the pieces were popping off. As you can see, I'm rubbing my hands and they're popping off. And I was like, oh no. So never again, I will never use that stuff again, y'all. So I had to go over those areas with DAP again and let them dry. And then my little helper here helped me sand everything down smooth again. So now I'm gonna start to mix my paint. So I'm gonna use the BB Frost that I always use. It's a paint transformer and it's really simple to use. You mix it together and then you just add it to your paint. So after I did that, I mixed everything up and I was ready to start painting this piece. All right, so to paint this piece, I was switching between my zebra brush and my Wooster roller. So I'm just brushing it on first just to make sure I can get all in that stencil and those grooves because it's raised. And then I just went over it with my roller brush so I can get a nice smooth finish. So I did about 3 coats, I believe, on each of the drawer fronts. So this is the first coat, and the first coats are never the best coats. So after I did a couple of coats, of course, it started to look a little bit better. All right, so after I finished my drawer fronts, I started to work on the bottom sides. So I'm just taping those areas that I do not want to get paint on, and then I'm going to take my roller brush and I'm just going to start to roll on the paint. But before I did that, look at me, I added some shellac on here, and then after I added that shellac, I just went ahead and, again, like I said, I started to roll on my paint. So I rolled it on both sides and I did 2 coats. Of course, in between each coat, I just took my 220 grit and I sanded everything down, wiped it off, and then began on my other coats. So to give this more a cohesive look, the front has a straight look now, so the side, I wanted it to have that same look. So I took some poplar board, I measured it out, cut it out, and then I am just nailing it to the sides here. And then after I nailed it, I caulked it so it can look nice and seamless. And then all I did was, of course, paint this, and I did 2 coats. So next I started to smooth everything out. So now I am using, I think I started with the 321st and then I came back with the 400 to smooth everything out at the end. But I did a 321st and now I'm taking this liming wax. I love to use this liming wax, it's so nice. And I'm just starting to wax the fronts and the sides, all of the areas basically that the wood was showing. I did a lime wash over it. Okay, so now I'm moving along to the inside of the drawers and I'm using this plastic wood filler to fill in those holes, and the color is golden oak so that it can blend in with the color of the wood that's on the inside anyway. So I'm just gonna add this, let it dry, and then I sanded everything down. After that, like I said, I'm coming back with my 400 grit and I am starting to sand all around the piece to make it nice and smooth. After I sanded everything, I came in with my, oh my god, this is my favorite. The citrus mint smells so good, but it's the Furniture Salve by Wise Owl, and all I'm doing is I am putting this on the inside of my drawers and on the outside, and it's really going to just revive the wood, and it smells so dang good, y'all. It smells so good. I love this stuff. So after I did that, I'm just taking my Dixie Belle spray wax and I'm just spraying it around my piece, and then I'm just going to add it on here. I love to use this stuff. It's really easy to use. You just spray on and leave it. You can do as many coats as you want, and then after that I'm just going to start to buff it out using my buffer. And then lastly, last but not least, I started to add these beautiful knobs on here, and that was it. And bum, 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 the final reveal. I just love her. She is so different. She is very neutral. Okay, you guys know I love neutral things. She's very neutral. I love the stencil pattern. I love the stencil pattern. Again, I'm gonna have it down below. These knobs, I found them at Hobby Lobby at the last minute, y'all, because I was gonna go with gold knobs, but then when I did the lime wash on the wood, it like changed the look completely, so I felt gold was not gonna go with this. So these crystal-like knobs are everything. Look what the Furniture Salve did to the inside of the drawers, and they smell amazing. I just love this. So if you guys enjoyed this video, make sure you give it a big thumbs up. Make sure you comment down below to let me know what you think, and I'll see you in my next one.